An 8th and a 10th place for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton is depressing, especially when just the day before Ferrari had suggested it was ready to win right away. No, it's just not right. The fact that 6 teams finished ahead of Ferrari at the 5.278-kilometer Albert Park Grand Prix circuit in Melbourne is dramatic and unexcusable. It is somewhat understandable that McLaren was ahead of everyone, as it showed both in qualifying and in the race. But the fact that Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were not put in a position to attack or even defend themselves is unacceptable. On Saturday, given the poor times in practice, it was thought that Ferrari had sacrificed itself by choosing a wet setup to attack during the race. Not at all. Clearly there was something else. What? We don't know. No one explained it. And Charles Leclerc, who had hinted at the mystery, kept quiet even after the race. The reality is that Ferrari was non-existent on dry track surface, terribly struggling in the rain. At times, the gap was more than 2.5 seconds per lap. And to make matters worse, they were further slowed down by strategic errors. Too many negative things altogether to think that Ferrari made no mistakes during the winter. Next Sunday, the race will be in China, at the impressive Shanghai International Circuit, and it will definitely go better. It has to go better. Then comes the graduation exam at the Suzuka circuit in Japan, and only after that race can we assess things. And what about Lewis Hamilton's debut in red? A disaster. Slow, clumsy, overtaken without the right to reply by Charles Leclerc. After a flurry of overly formal statements about his love for the red team, the wonderful environment he found, and how everyone at Ferrari is nice, talented, and good. But how must he have felt when he saw the race results, with Kimi Antonelli, at 18 years old, driving his Mercedes, finishing in 5th. A very tough debut for Lewis Charles Leclerc, who gave him no favors, unleashed after a winter in which he had stayed in the shadows, contemplating revenge. Very impressive from the Monegasque driver with the double overtake on the first lap, then frustrated by the car and the performance of others, with a spin that complicated his day and dropped him outside the top 5. In the chaos of rain, dry conditions, and the final downpour, there was only McLaren in Melbourne. Lando Norris dominated despite a couple of mistakes, and it became clear why Max Verstappen is the undisputed world champion. In the most precarious grip conditions, the Dutchman, with a perfect strategy set by the Red Bull pit, showed his skill, coming close to overtaking the British driver. He could have tried, but settled for 2nd place, which pushes Red Bull to the top. Oscar Piastri was strong until 2/3 of the race. Then he paid for his aggression and immaturity. On the other hand, a praise to Andrea Kimi Antonelli, who raced like a driver with great experience and showed qualities beyond his impressive 5th place. George Russell did well, finishing 3rd, and Alex Albon did excellently, bringing Williams into the top positions, while Carlos Sainz crashed immediately, followed by another veteran, Fernando Alonso. A race without drama, with the McLaren cars always in front, Charles Leclerc long in 5th and Lewis Hamilton 8th until the storm chaos. A strange race, but not crazy, because there is logic in the result, and nothing came by chance. China, for those without an orange car, will already be a chance for redemption, especially for the Maranello team led by Frederic Vasseur. For Ferrari, there is little to say after the Australian Grand Prix. Yet, there is much to analyze. Everything that could go wrong did for Ferrari. Across 5 sessions, free practice, qualifying, and the race, the SF-25 only showed signs of life in FP2. An illusory session where promising performance levels emerged, only to disappear completely in both dry and changing conditions over Melbourne's 58 laps. The SF-25 single-seater, which had adopted a higher downforce setup, did not benefit from what many wrongly had described as a wet weather setup. Let's make it clear once and for all. In today's Formula One, there are no specific wet weather configurations. The truth is that at this moment, the Italian car needs to run with higher wing angles to unlock its potential, which was nowhere to be seen. The comparison with rivals was ruthless. Despite the confusion caused by safety cars and an evolving track between rain and drying phases, the Ferrari never emerged, constantly suffering significant gaps to the dominant McLarens, who actually underperformed relative to their true potential, to Max Verstappen's Red Bull, which remains a consistent contender, and even to the Mercedes duo, who finished well ahead, aided by Andrea Kimi Antonelli's sensational comeback to 4th place. The time for reflection will come, though by next Friday, the cars will already be back on track for the first free practice session of the Chinese Grand Prix. There is little time to recover and understand what went wrong with the Ferrari in the Australian Grand Prix weekend. But beyond the modest form already apparent in Bahrain, the most concerning issue was the pit wall's inability to read the race. In the closing stages, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc suddenly found themselves in first and second place. That was the moment when the strategists completely failed, forcing both drivers, who also played a part in the blunder, to stay out on hard tires as the track got wetter. An inexplicable decision that reveals one undeniable truth. Right now, confusion reigns supreme in Maranello. It is now time to put away the triumphant tone from the Fiorano shakedown, where even credible journalists touted hastily gathered lap times as record-breaking figures. Of course, one must avoid the opposite mistake of declaring the season lost. The 2024 Formula One campaign showed that comebacks are possible, and today's conditions only magnified the struggles of a project that still needs fine-tuning. In China, on a track more similar to the Bahrain circuit in terms of characteristics, we will see how the SF-25 reacts and whether it can immediately get back on track toward the goal everyone has declared: winning the 2025 Formula One World Championship. Words carry weight, and everyone in the Ferrari camp has spoken heavy ones. Now they must prove that those statements were not just empty talk, but the result of confidence in a job well done. Let's forget the Milan fanfare, the glitter of Piazza Castello, and the unjustified optimism from the mid-February filming day. It's time to get to work and solve a series of technical and logistical issues that have now exploded dramatically. Looking at Ferrari's past, the ghosts of the Australian race emerge. The 2025 debut has thrown the prancing horse back a few years. A mediocre performance and a series of strategic errors reminiscent of the Ferrari from previous management eras. A Ferrari that, under Fred Vasseur, had seemingly been left behind. The French team principal appeared on Sky Sport with an unusually grim expression. Naturally positive and always optimistic, the Maranello boss had to face a reality far from what he had hoped for. Fred Vasseur admitted after the race that McLaren was a step ahead, probably since testing, while Ferrari was on par with Mercedes and Red Bull. As the French manager often reminds us, the season is long and one race doesn't define a championship. While Ferrari must not ignore the alarm bells from Australia, it would also be premature to write off a 24-race season after just one chaotic round. Fred Vasseur has been saying this for weeks. The 2025 Ferrari was not designed to make an early season impact, but to unlock its potential over time. The race for updates will be crucial in determining the championship outcome. Of course, the prancing horse must avoid disasters like Melbourne, which could prove costly in terms of both points and morale. The Italian side's team principal will have to quickly pick up the pieces after the Australian debacle to restore energy, enthusiasm, and performance for the Shanghai weekend, which some already see as critical.